question I posed was, if the court's going to get in the business of ordering the legislature to appropriate more money for schools, shouldn't the court also be involved with how that money is spent?
We agree with that. I agree with your statement. I think you may have to, especially after what happened with Montoy and the 3-year plan that became a 2-year plan, I think you need to retain jurisdiction somehow, some way, because I don't frankly trust the legislature to fund education or fulfill their promises. That's my response to your question. With regard to the notion of the court getting involved in the level of funding, that's because Article 6 in your cases say there has to be some threshold here, and it's pretty easy to determine that because it's based on the actual costs. And your decisions have given good guidance to the legislature that you need to pay what it costs.
There is a minimum floor. We've got to make sure the schools do a certain amount, absolutely. But it's unrealistic to think that the numbers just keep ratcheting up year after year after year, and that somehow ensures that the students are getting a good education.
And don't you think that minimum floor has to have context with what's going on around the country or even around the region? I mean, what I'm thinking about is, you get into Eighth Amendment kind of challenges. Well, what's cruel and unusual? Well, it's who knows what cruel and unusual. So we look around to see what's happening. Does that concept have applicability here?
Well, I think it could in assessing what's rational. And if Kansas were dead last in every category, that certainly might suggest we're not meeting a floor that we might want to achieve. That's far from the truth here. The other piece that Your Honor is well aware of is there's a very significant federal component here as well in terms of federal law that is also influencing across the nation the content of curriculum and what's going on in the schools. So there's that as well. But I don't think there's any evidence to support the notion that Kansas is at the bottom, for example, of the states. Quite the contrary. There's a lot of evidence that it does very well on a number of measures. So if we're talking about a floor, then it seems to me you have to stay away from the bottom, but you don't have to be number one in the country necessarily. That pushes us towards a ceiling instead of a floor.